Hello, I'm Gleemo, and I'm the Keeper of the Chronicles for this Call of Cthulhu Massive Nyarlathotep campaign on Roll20 and streaming to Twitch and YouTube. Welcome to Session 12, where we finally are going to get to London. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning of this recording, so we lost the player introductions and the first few paragraphs here, so I'm re-recording these on a technical difficulty screen now. But then the regular stream kicks in after a few minutes, so please bear with us. We have a new player. Welcome to Tarkovsky. We'll get a good introduction to Tark a little bit later in, and an even better one next session. Okay, so I'm going to summarize the first two chapters and re-retcon You're Leaving New York in order to fit Jack into the mix. Jesse, Alistair, Seamus, and Martin all applied to go on an archaeological dig down in Peru in 1920. Down there you met Alejandro, a day laborer who decided to join the expedition, and Jackson Elias, a noted author of modern-day cult practices, who was there to research a story about a suspected death cult operating in the Peruvian highlands, which the locals called the Carasiri. The leader of the dig was a man named Augustus Larkin. His second in command was Luis de Mendoza. It turned out that neither man was what he seemed, and that the Carasiri were all too real. Actual fat-sucking, vampiric things who served some strange force in a pyramid up in the mountains. Larkin wasn't a Carasiri, but had some strange dark force inside him that wanted the pyramid burst open. The heroes killed Larkin and headed up to the pyramid. There they were able to repair the mystic seals around the pyramid, cutting the Carasiri off from their dark powers, and killing them all. Jackson wrote about your adventures in his book, The Hungry Dead, although he kept the mythos angles to himself, and presented the Carasiri as purely another death cult. At the end of 1924, all of you were summoned to New York by Jackson. He said he had news about the Carlisle expedition and needed your help in getting to the truth. So here's what public information you know about the Carlisle expedition. The Carlisle expedition sailed from New York in 1919, led by 24-year-old Roger Carlyle, a millionaire playboy who inexplicably turned from the life of a wastrel to fund and lead an archaeological expedition to Egypt. The principal members of the expedition were Sir Aubrey Penhew, age 54, titled, wealthy, and a noted Egyptologist. Hypatia Masters, age 27, a beautiful society girl, accomplished photographer and linguist. Jack Brass Brady, age 36, mercenary soldier, weapons expert, and Carlyle's confidant and bodyguard. And Dr. Robert Houston, age 52, fashionable psychoanalyst and interpreter of dreams. The expedition members in America sailed to London to consult with Sir Aubrey Penhew on matters concerning ancient Egypt, who then joined the team. After a few weeks in England's capital, they departed for Egypt, using Cairo as a base. The expedition performed several short desert excavations. An important find was rumored, but the expedition refused to comment to reporters. The principal members departed for Mombasa, Kenya, and quickly went inland to Nairobi. At the beginning of August, the expedition hired 20 bearers and headed into the wilderness and then vanished. In March of 1920, a Kyuku tribesman told authorities in Nairobi of a party of whites near the Mountain of the Black Wind, a local name for one of the high Kenyan peaks. Later, rumors intimated that inhuman forces had destroyed the expedition. On hearing about the missing expedition, Roger Carlyle's sister Erica traveled to Africa and hired a search party. After 10 weeks of effort, Erica, with help from local authorities, found the remains of the expedition. The corpses were remarkably preserved, although what little was left appeared to have been pulled apart and torn to shreds by animals. A horrible death. The encampment was totally destroyed. Despite reports to the contrary, the remains were strewn about in the open, and no effort had been made to conceal them. Blame was quickly pinned on Nandi tribesmen. Some mention was made of a pagan cult powerful in the area, but authorities scoffed at the idea and did not follow up on such whispers. Nor were such things mentioned at the subsequent trial. Fingers were pointed at some tribesmen who were tried and then hanged. The expedition members were declared dead, and the incident was forgotten. So then, fast forward to end of 1924. Jackson reaches out to all of you to tell you that he has word about the Carlisle expedition, and asks you all to meet him in New York. So the rest of you arrive in New York in early January 1925 and walk in on Jackson being ritualistically murdered by cultists. You were able to apprehend the cultists and found out that Jackson was the latest of over a dozen victims of the cult. At the reading of Jackson's will, you found out that Jackson suspected that he might be murdered soon, and implored all of you to finish his research and avenge his death. Jackson's lawyer, Carlton Ramsey, has $30,000 in a trust to bankroll your operations. From Jackson's hotel room, you recovered several clues pointing all over the world. From Carlton and from Jackson's publisher, Jonah Kensington, you received several sets of notes documenting irregularities in the Carlisle investigation. Jackson obviously felt that not all the members of the expedition were killed. You questioned Erica Carlisle, Roger's sister, about the expedition. You learned a few things that weren't in the public record, including that Roger had an African mistress. Erica blamed this woman for Roger's fascination with Egypt, and you took possession of several of Roger's occult tomes. As you continued to investigate in New York, you found out that the cult there was called the Bloody Tongue, and seemed to be operating out of an African import shop called the Juju House up in Harlem. The police had previously arrested a suspect in the murders named Hilton Adams. Hilton was on death row when Jackson was killed, so he obviously didn't do it. His wife Millie begged you to help clear her husband's name. Unfortunately, you led the cultist to Millie, and she was murdered and turned into a zombie to guard the secret basement of the Juju House. Not knowing who you could trust, you decided to attack the cult on the night of their next ritual. Fearing their numbers and occult powers, you threw smoke bombs down into the basement. Alejandro, overcome by madness, plunged into the darkness. You sealed the exit and left. After the raid, you secreted yourselves in Carlton Ramsey's office. The next morning, he showed you a newspaper talking of a 6-alarm blaze in the block containing the Juju House. You were all very confused, since the grenades you set should have been smoke only, not incendiary devices. Carlton booked you passage on the evening tide to London, and told you to stay out of sight in his office throughout the day. Towards late afternoon, Jonah Kensington arrived with another man. Carlton said, "I took the liberty of inviting Jonah over. He had a couple of things he wanted to tell you before you leave." And Jonah shook all of your hands and said, "Well, it seems like you did good by Jackson. Maybe a little too good if the papers are to be believed. Carlton tells me you're bound for England. When you get there, look up an acquaintance of Jackson's, a man called Mickey Mahoney. He's the editor of a newspaper's probably too kind a description. Let's say tabloid. It's called The Scoop. Publishes all manner of crazy stuff. Jackson used him as a source. His offices are on Fleet Street. Start there, at least you'll have a friendly face." Hey, George. Let me just get your camera on here. How you doing?
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
Did the party get killed?
Not quite yet.
Oh, cool.
Carl, can you turn your camera off and then back on real quick? Perfect. All right. Got everybody in the right place. George, how's things been going with you?
Oh, mostly all right. Though some stuff happened, so
Oh,
I'm back out in California. But hopefully we'll resolve that sooner rather than later.
alrighty. Good luck with that. Um, so I was just giving everyone a quick recap of what has happened to you in the last 5 years of game time, um, and was just about to introduce our new player here. So Jonah says to you guys. So I'm retconning the last little chapter before we leave the last scene before we leave New York to get uh, Tark's character Jack uh, involved here. So you guys are at Carlton's office after the raid on the Juju house, um, and Jonah comes over, tells you about Mickey Mahoney and the scoop, and then says, "Let me introduce Jack Mackenzie, a journalist and fellow longtime friend of Jackson's. He's been out of town the last couple of weeks doing deep background interviews on the Carlyles. He was fit to burn the city down when he heard about Jackson's murder, hopped the first train back and nearly broke down the door to my office trying to get the story. I figured I'd better put the five of you together for your own goods. Try and stay out of trouble." Carlton and Jonah smile at each other. Jonah heads out. At sunset, Carlton puts you all in a car heading to the docks. "One last thing, I wouldn't expect you to go without your weapons. Just be sure to check them into your luggage before you get to customs. If anyone asks, tell the officials that you're on a brief stopover in London on your way to an African safari. For a small license fee, they'll give you the travel firearms permit and send you on your way. Here's $500 against initial expenses. Wire me when you need more. I'd suggest changing it to pound sterling as soon as you get there. It's going to be much more readily accepted every place you go from here than our American dollars. Good luck. I hope you find what Jackson was looking for." So, Jack, why don't you introduce yourself to the party?
Yeah, Jack is wearing a fairly cheap suit and a battered hat. He looks a bit disheveled, and he's got like eyes that are always looking around, kind of darting back and forth. And he looks all you up and down and says, "I've been hearing crazy things about you guys."
Say,
Truth is stranger than fiction.
it wasn't us.
It'll turn you white.
I've just been sitting at the table reading.
Getting crazier and crazier.
All
as
work
he
and no
reads.
play makes Homer something something.
Oh wait, this is before we got on the ship, right?
Yes, this is before you're on the ship.
Great, because I go crazier.
Say, how old is Jack?
Probably late 20s.
All right, so youngish.
Yeah.
On the younger side. Son, you ain't seen half the things you probably heard about. I'm not sure you really want to go on this.
Yeah, well, I owe it to Jackson.
Well, if that's your attitude, kind of light a cigar, then you found the right group of people, I guess.
Just make sure to, have information so we can like inform your next of kin. In
Hey,
case you
now.
decide, hey, I gotta see it. Run it.
I'll keep that in mind.
That's no way to start the rookie off. So is out of character is the official retcon now is what's his name? Alejandro went insane.
That's what you know, is that, at the end he ran into the darkness. He never came back, and out of an abundance of whatever, you guys locked him in with the cultists and got the hell out of there. And the next day, you found out that the building and several buildings around it burned to the ground.
Well, the damn
Which
fool knew the plan.
Which is super weird, given that you only threw smoke grenades down.
Yeah, it clearly wasn't our fault. And
That's Aztecian fire smoke.
The next time we see Alejandro, he's going to be a supervillain because this is Pulp.
I blame the demolitions experts.
I didn't bring along any of my high explosives.
Watch. All right.
Clearly, that was your first mistake.
Okay, so Jack has been off doing research about the Carlisle principles, and this is what extra information he's been able to find out. So there were 5 important members of the Carlisle expedition. The dashing Roger Carlyle, the charismatic Dr. Robert Houston, scholarly Sir Aubrey Penhew, beautiful Hypatia Masters, and resourceful Jack Brady. So these are the kind of dossiers that, and I'll put these into a handout that you guys can refer to. I just ran out of time today. But these are the kind of dossiers about each one of them. So Roger Vane Worthington Carlyle. No police record, no military service. Wealthy yet neglected, ignored by his father, young Carlyle craved attention. His lawyers evaded a paternity suit against him when he was 17. Carlyle underwent short treatments for alcoholism when he was 18 and again when he was 20. Miraculously, Carlyle graduated from Groton, but was allowed gentlemen's resignations from a succession of excellent universities. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Miskatonic, Cornell, and USC over the next 3 years. When his parents died in an automobile crash, Carlyle seemed to take stock of himself, and for the next year gained the general approval of his peers, retainers, and relatives, but slipped back into his old ways when his sprightly sister Erica, who had not neglected her studies, showed a better grasp of family affairs. His lack of character was somewhat confirmed when Carlyle fell under the influence of a mysterious East African woman, a self-styled poetess with the nom de plume Nicona Bonet. Rumors of debaucheries and worse circulated amongst police, journalists, and others whose business it is to know the backgrounds of public personalities. During this period, Carlyle began to drain great sums of money from family interests, which prompted vicious arguments between himself, Erica, and their executives. In person, Carlyle remained forthright and friendly, and was a popular figure at glittering New York night spots. In the months before he left for Egypt, Carlyle seemed to withdraw and become more serious. But though Carlyle might have been maturing, the goals of the expedition remained nebulous and secretive even to those who should have known. The first Carlyle, Abner Vane Carrel, was transported to Virginia in 1714, having been convicted of unwholesome and desperate activity not otherwise characterized by the authorities in Derbyshire, England. Abner was the illegitimate and discredited son of an undistinguished Midlands noble. Abner's son Ephraim moved to New York, adopted Carlyle as a more gallant surname, and made sound investments in lumber and textiles, the basis of the family fortune to come. The Carlyle interests amassed huge profits during the American Civil War, and far-sighted management further expanded the financial empire in the half-century thereafter. Dr. Robert Ellington Houston, no police record, no military service. The youngest of 3 sons, his father was a Chicago MD who, as a young man, was reputed to have belonged to several deviant sects. Robert Houston graduated with honors from Johns Hopkins, and after 3 years threw over his circulatory ailments practice and his wife, and went to Vienna to study under Freud and then under Jung. Houston was amongst the first Americans to undertake this esoteric and controversial study of the mind, which dealt with so much with sexual behavior that no respectable person could talk about it. Houston's seemingly salacious and dangerous past, along with his elegant manners and sardonic wit, made him pretty much in demand when he returned to New York City. There he established a practice in psychoanalysis catering to the very wealthy. Houston enjoyed fame and notoriety. His fees were whispered to be $50 to $60 per visit, at a time when a college professor might make $4,000 a year. Women found him suave, handsome, sensitive, perceptive, and sexy. Among his patients was Roger Carlyle, though Houston supposedly went on the expedition with Carlyle in order to continue his treatment. Houston had just broken off an affair with Miss Imelda Bosch, who had then committed suicide. Carlyle helped hush up the scandal, perhaps in return for Houston's company on the expedition. There were also rumors that Carlyle did not want Houston at large while he was far away in Egypt. Carlyle may have believed that Houston's ethics were not strong enough to resist revealing explosive material about his young patients. After Houston was declared dead, his records were turned over to the Medical Affairs Board of the state of New York. Controversy about this reached the newspapers. Jack learned that the records had not been destroyed because nobody got around to authorizing the destruction. In those records are all of Houston's notes concerning Roger Carlyle. The files were carefully boxed, marked, and stored at the Medical Affairs Board in New York. Adjudication finally determined that these records were in fact medical in nature, though old-school doctors resisted the notion for several months. They are confidential records. Only Houston's heirs, the patients, or a doctor showing good cause can easily gain access. A Mr. Adrian Ferris was secretary of the board and controlled all the files. So, Jack, you want to tell everyone how you managed to sneak your way in and get those files?
Well, it wasn't easy. There was a bit of bribery involved, obviously. But I more or less bamboozled this Adrian guy into thinking that I was going to write an expose on him if he didn't let me see him.
Nice. I promise we won't hold any of that against you at any point in the future. The files were held in a simple manila envelope titled Carlyle, Roger VW, and they contained only a very few relevant excerpts. Anyone reading the files should perceive that the more that Houston grew to know Carlyle, the less Houston was willing to put on paper about him. And I am going to give you guys a new handout, America's 16. So the big things in here, it summarizes the first meeting and a few subsequent sessions. They started meeting in January of 1918. At his sister's insistence, Mr. Roger Vane Worthington Carlyle visited me this morning. He deprecates the importance of his state of mind, but concedes that he's had some trouble sleeping due to a recurring dream in which he hears a distant voice calling his name. Interestingly, the voice uses Mr. Carlyle's second given name, Vane, by which Mr. Carlyle admits he's always thinking of himself. Carlyle moves towards the voice and has to struggle through a web-like mist in which the caller is understood to stand. The caller is a man, tall, gaunt, dark. An inverted ankh blazes on his forehead. Following the Egyptian theme, C has no conscious interest in things Egyptian, he said. The man extends his hand to C, his palms upward. Pictured on his left palm, C discovers is his own face. On the right palm, C sees an unusual, misshapen pyramid. The caller then brings his hands together, and C feels himself float off the ground and into space. He halts before an assemblage of monstrous figures. The figure of humans with animal limbs and fangs and talons, or of no particular shape at all. All of them circle a pulsating ball of yellow energy, which C realizes as another aspect of the calling man. The ball draws him in. He becomes part of it and sees through eyes not his own. A great triangle appears in the void, its twisted symmetry of the same fashion as the visions of the pyramid. C then hears the caller say, "And become with me a god." As millions of odd shapes and forms rush into the triangle, C wakes. C does not consider the dream a nightmare, although it upsets his sleep. He says that he revels in it, and that it is a genuine calling, although my strong impression is that he is actually undecided about it. An inability to choose seems to characterize much of his life. September 18th, 1918. He calls her Maru, Anastasia, and my princess. He's obsessive about her, as well he might be. Exterior devotion is certainly one way to see the tensions of megalomaniacal contradictions. She is certainly a rival to my authority. December 3rd, 1918. If I do not go, C threatens exposure. If I do go, all pretense of analysis surely will be lost. What then will be my role? So anyway, you have that neat little handout for your perusal.
Wait, that was written by Houston?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Houston also had files for Erica Carlisle. Her file notes a few innocuous consultations for which he charged an outrageous $90 each, and established her relations with her brother troubled her. Houston believed that Erica to be a remarkably fine character, and notes that he rarely saw such a capable adjustment to the problems of living. He suggests to her that he would be glad to talk to Roger.
Compared to her brother, who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
That deal with the inverted Ankh ties it to the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh from the Life as a God book that I've gone crazy over.
Yes, it does.
Wait, that's still in the future, though, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
3 days in the future.
that's the one I read on the boat, so
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Sugar Lumps. Okay, Sir Aubrey Penhew, Baronet of Pevensey. Young Sir Aubrey was caught pinching a policeman's helmet in 1898 while at Oxford. He had limited service as a lieutenant in the Yorkshire Guards, 1901 to 1902, breveted as a colonel in the British Army Intelligence, 1915 to 1916, and then retired due to injury. Penhew's public life is easily followed in Who's Who, Burke's Peerage, etc. Sir Aubrey graduated with honors in classics from Oxford, but spent the next several years in Egypt surveying and performing exploratory excavations amid the then little-known wonders upriver to the first cataract and beyond. As his official biography notes, Sir Aubrey is credited with founding several important branches of Egyptology and for several important archaeological discoveries, particularly at Dashur. Nearly as important, the Penhu Foundation in England, set up by Sir Aubrey, has underwritten many influential researchers at home and abroad, and is responsible for the education of many brilliant but penniless scholars. With the inevitable nimbus of black sheep and blackguards down through the centuries, the Penhus trace their nobility from the time of William the Conqueror, when Sir Boris Penhu acquired great holdings in the west of England. With the exception of one Sir Blaise, who was beheaded for treason and black magic. His crimes nearly cost the line its titles and properties. With that exception, the Penhu prosperity and prestige has been undiminished for 8 centuries. Sir Aubrey has title to several famous stately homes, as well as mansions in London, the Cotswolds, Monaco, Alexandria, Egypt, Alexandria, and townhouses in Paris, Rome, and Athens. He is incontestably wealthy and reputedly made new fortunes from his American holding companies during the Great War. Though a public figure, Sir Aubrey's private life is little known. He is a bachelor without family or heirs other than the Penhu Foundation. His Egyptologist peers hold him in high regard. Miss Hypatia Celestine Masters. No police record or record of public service. Masters is heiress to the Masters armaments fortune, the dark antecedents of which may have been chronicled in the muckraking Masters of Corruption by Nikolai Steinberg. Miss Masters' grandfather, Aldington Masters, held on to and increased the holdings by leaving most decisions to a series of chief executives who uniformly made intelligent, far-ranging, and profitable moves. George, her father, also adopted this relaxing way of life, spending his free time doting on his daughter. Hypatia attended Swiss and French academies, showing facility for languages. Her great interest, however, proved to be photography. Several of her shows earned good reviews and enthusiastic attendance. A daring streak led to an incautious affair with a Catholic Marxist, one Raoul Luis Maria Panera, at City College of New York. Jack, a close friend of yours, Olivia de Bernadesta, confided in you that Hypatia was pregnant by Raoul, but had the baby aborted and fled the country with Carlyle rather than face her lover. Miss Masters dated Roger Carlyle several times, but there was never anything serious in the relationship, and the two remained friends. Her presence on the expedition might have been Carlyle's gallant whim. No one actually knows why she was invited or accepted. And then Jack Oriel Brass Brady. Brady's police record lists assaults and barroom brawls, petty theft, loitering, gambling, mopery. Yeah, you guys get convicted of accused of mopery once. Public drunkenness, and an acquitted murder charge.
You gotta get to public drunkenness.
Awesome. As a Marine sergeant, Brady served in China, with extended periods in Shanghai and later on the Western Front in France, earning a Bronze Star and other commendations. He's rumored to have been a mercenary in Turkey just after the war, and to know Turkish and Arabic as well as several Chinese dialects. During a fight in Oilfield, California, he apparently throttled his opponent to death before onlookers could pull him off, suggesting great strength or perhaps excellent technique, as well as a violent streak. The Oilfield murder piqued the curiosity of Roger Carlyle, who was just being expelled from USC. After an hour-long interview, the two forged an intimate alliance, amazing everyone who knew Carlyle, for the youth had never made any strong friendships. Carlyle summoned the best legal minds in the country for the defense, who proceeded to blow to pieces the seemingly open and shut case offered by the county prosecutor, and eclipsing the testimony of 7 eyewitnesses. Brady was acquitted on a variety of technical grounds. From that time, Jack Brady and Roger Carlyle were rarely separated. At times, Brady worked as Carlyle's bodyguard, at other times was his spokesman. For the expedition, Brady acted as general foreman and manager, and by all accounts performed well. Brady's nickname, Brass, comes from a brass plate about 4 inches square, which he carries over his heart. The plate is described as being covered with strange signs and inscriptions. Bullets have dented it twice. Brady has said that his mother, a recluse in Upper Michigan, had the eye, and that she made this plate to guard her impetuous son. So that is all of the crazy information that Jack is able to give you guys for non-public stuff about our dear friends, the Carlisle expedition.
That is a whole lot of reading.
I will get those put into handouts so that you can refer to them later. I didn't have time before today's session.
I will be right back. I have spilled my drink and need to clean it up.
Alrighty.
While he's doing that, I have a question.
Even
I don't know if
9 o'clock
anybody
yet.
else has looked at their character sheet. Did they do an update?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's got a lot more gray, and it does look different. I wasn't sure what was changed.
Huh. How about that? Go to GitHub. Take a look at the commit history.
Hopefully it's
I do
just a CSS change.
Yeah, it could be a bunch of things. Let's see here.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of Pulp Cthulhu overlays. Turn that on. Come on. Pulp Bouts Madness.
Why you slow?
Oh, they have a section you can actually add your talents now if you turn it on.
Oh, nice. We don't have to just stick them in the side under the skills, huh?
Yeah, adding traits.
Looks like there's also an outstanding pull request. So there may be more changes coming in.
Dum dum dum.
Let's see. Is this the COC 7th?
Yes.
Is that the one you're using? Okay. 7th. And allow me to click.
All right, I am back. Sorry about that.
No problem. Of course, now the cameras are out of order again.
Wait, how's that
George,
possible? You just
George
left
and Carl, can you flip your cameras off?
How do the cameras get out of order if someone leaves the room?
Well, I switched my camera off so you didn't have to watch me sitting down my laptop and
Oh, I see.
swapping up Guinness.
Okay. George, turn yours back on. Great. And then Carl, if you turn yours back on, and then they'll be back in the right order. Awesome. Okay. So, you guys are on the boat to London. We kind of already played through that part, so unless anyone wants to do some serious retconning of what happened, or there's anything else that you all want to discuss before you make it to London, Um,
Well, how lucky was I with the ladies?
I'm gonna say that that all plays out off screen, and you can be as lucky or unlucky as you want to be.
How many points of luck are you willing to spend?
So I wrote a whole bunch of flavor text about 1920s London, but I've also been just like reading at you for an hour, so I'm gonna summarize like really, really quick. Um, so there's 7.5 million people in the Greater London area at this time frame. Uh, so not that makes London the largest city and wealthiest city in the world at this point. Um, the Great War claimed most of a generation. Most families lost at least 2 people during the war. The county of London covers approximately 116 square miles. It's ridiculously easy to hide and or get lost in its Warren-like streets. The wealthiest portions of the city are to the north of the Thames and the West End. The actual city of London is only about 1 square mile just north of the Thames, within London's medieval walls. I'm gonna just so the economy's starting to recover from the war. Wartime rationing had closed down all of the nightclubs and cocktail bars, but they're starting to come back. As far as money goes, at this point in time, it's roughly $5 to £1 sterling, and the pound was still at this point broken up into a pound is 20 shillings, 240 pennies. If you are getting around London, there's wide varieties of transport. You've got the underground. The tube offers cheap and convenient travel around the city of London, but the majority of stations are closed between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. There are double-decker open-top buses. Night buses in larger community centers in London have been available for the last few years, but services are rare outside of London. London's famed motorized black taxi cabs have started operating. Horse-drawn hansom cabs continue to offer an alternative to the motor car. And there are electrified hop-on, hop-off trams running weekdays only from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And plenty of cars that you can hire. And railway service out to areas outside of London itself. So, you all arrive on Groundhog Day, February 2nd, 1925. You pass through customs easily, thanks to Carlton's tip. So let's start with the essentials. Where are you guys planning to stay in the city? Cheapest rooms could be found at slum hotels in the heart of the poorest and least salubrious areas where crime is rife. Taking a room there offers the possibility of anonymity, but brings you shoulder to shoulder with all manners of criminals. who would take advantage, especially those who would take advantage of gullible tourists. There are plenty of B&Bs in the suburbs and countryside, or there are plenty of average to grand hotels. Anything from the Ritz all the way up to the Waldorf in central London, or in the Cavendish or Langham area. There's mid-level hotels that don't have a whole lot of glamour.
Can we stay at 221B Baker Street?
Is that a bank at this time?
Buckingham Palace. What can we afford? Who all has money?
I thought this was an all expenses paid vacation.
Fair.
Well,
can we
your
afford?
friend Carlton gave you $500, which will turn into £100 sterling, against future expenses.
All right, and how much a night is a hotel where we probably won't get stabbed?
After what we've been through.
£2 a night.
Did we? I forgot. We came over on a tramp steamer.
No, it wasn't a tramp steamer. It was just a regular regular sailing vessel, or steam vessel.
Like a passenger
liner. Yeah.
service? All right. 'Cause I was gonna say, if we've been slumming it.
How much would it cost to hire a house in the country, but not too far away from London?
Gonna be here that long?
Well, I'm thinking the chances of us committing multiple felonies is quite high.
I knew I liked you guys.
I mean, you
What are
could
saying?
you could easily also, rent a room for the month from a landlady out in the countryside. I'll say it would cost you £10 for the month.
Okay, can I make a suggestion? Why don't we first just get a hotel for the couple of days till we figure out what we're going to be, where we're going to be, and what we're going to be doing here in England. Because there's no point in taking a place out where it's going to be quite a distance traveling every day.
Well, is the hotel going to mind carrying some guns?
We go South London then.
Well, those faulty towers, they don't know what the hell's going on over there.
And Jesse isn't used to living the high life anyway, so anything improved from a jail is a step up, as we've already seen.
Hey, I've been living in cheap rooms all my life. It's the possibility of getting stabbed before you go to sleep just makes it easier for me to shut my eyes at night.
Let's see here.
Hopefully we can break our streak of going to jail.
No.
Why stop now?
Let's get a place in Whitechapel.
Are there any African importers around the city of London we can go harass?
Given that we're still in the colonization mode in London, yes, there are plenty.
Wait, where's the ship docked? Like, where did we get off the boat?
So you would have put in at Southampton, not pictured here, and then taken the train.
Oh, it'd be like way out there, I guess.
Yeah. And then taken the train into London.
All right. Right.
So just generally for my own plotting and planning, are you thinking high class, low class, middle of the road?
Trying to remember what I remember of London.
I mean, I like the idea of a hotel for at least a few nights, and then we kind of figure out what our stomping grounds are going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, if we are following in the footsteps of the Carlisle expedition, which was probably in some pretty high class arrangements over there. So we might want to try to find out where they were when they stayed over in London.
I mean, Carlisle was a big shot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, millionaire.
So probably not where we're going to be staying. I don't know. I'm gonna. Well, we could. I'd say like middle of the road.
Works for me.
Okay.
Maybe somewhere near
King's Cross.
Aubrey, somewhere near Aubrey Penhue's museum or whatever it was.
Where's that?
I think that was in London.
So the Penhue Foundation.
Yeah, Penhue Foundation. Number 9. Right
Yep.
near the British Museum.
Okay, so you we'll say that you get yourself checked into something
that's
like
the great
like one of
thing
the
is
the Langham Hotel. Get yourself you get yourself set up. So, where are you going first?
Well, we should talk to the newspaper guy, Mickey Mahoney. See what he knows.
Excellent.
Plan to me.
And in my experience, newspaper editors either know everything that's going on or they're complete morons. So we'll see.
Okay. Great.
Get some money along the way.
So the offices of the Scoop are easily found on the 3rd floor of a shabby building in Fleet Street, not far from Ludgate Circus. Mickey Mahoney is a red-haired, cigar-smoking, and grubby journalist of Irish descent. I think I've even got a token for him somewhere here. There he is. Okay. The Scoop is a weekly tabloid specializing in printing stories about gory murders, sex scandals, and weird happenings. He is a cynical and tough customer, ever on the lookout for suitably scandalous stories to present. He heard about Jackson's death shortly after it happened. He sympathizes with you and offers you a whiskey, the real stuff that you can't find back home in America. Mahoney relays that Jackson was recently in London and promised him a story about an evil cult operating in the heart of the city. Jackson hinted that the cult might be well connected, but didn't provide any hard proof. Mahoney never got the story, but would love to have it, and offers to pay you up to 15 English pounds if you can bring him the full salacious details. Of course, Mahoney's also more than happy to take any sort of odd, saucy, or gruesome story, and also pays equally well for photos of cute models in their underwear, with such accompanying stories as Her Cornish Holiday. A true professional, Mahoney cares about the truth, unless not caring about the truth brings more cash.
We should report him to the authorities.
This is the UK in the 30s. Sorry, 20s.
Yeah.
Get away with this, and they've got booze. What's not to like?
So, this is what Mahoney can tell you about.
What happened to Jackson? So he was talking to Jackson, right?
Yep.
Forgot.
Yeah. So Jackson was here in early December. Jackson never mentioned the name of the cult, nor did he talk about his evolving suspicions. Jackson was keen to browse through the Scoop's back issues and had picked out some stories that had caught his eye. You guys are welcome to do the same, but Mahoney seems to remember that there was only a few stories that he was really interested in.
Does he remember what they were?
Well, why don't one of you make a library use roll?
Anybody good at that?
I got a 50.
It's better than me.
That's pretty good.
Wait, we're in a library? I don't understand.
That's what you can use for, it works for this too.
Yeah, it's an archive of newspapers. It's that kind of
Yeah, I've got 50 as well.
Jesse hates library research.
Okay. So within an hour of helping out Mickey, he remembers the three articles that Jackson was looking at, and so the first one, shocking canvases craze, local artists' monstrous scenes mock surrealists. Now collectors can buy savage scenes which rival or surpass the worst nightmares of the Great War, but which are far more exotic than that grim business. London artist Mr. Miles Shipley's work is being sought out by collectors who have paid up to £300 for individual paintings. This correspondent has seen a number of the works of artist Miles Shipley and finds them repulsive beyond belief. Maidens ravished, monsters ripping out a man's innards, shadowy, grotesque landscapes, and faces grimacing in horror represent only a fraction of Shipley's nightmarish work. Despite their repellent content, these works are conceived and executed with uncanny verisimilitude. Mr. Shipley's imagination is sublime and almost as though the artist had worked from photographs of alien places, surely never of this earth. The artist is reportedly in contact with other dimensions in which powerful beings exist, and says he merely renders visible his visions. Mr. Shipley is a working-class man without formal artistic training, who has nonetheless made good where thousands have failed. Art critics say that Shipley provides an English answer to the continental artistic movement of surrealism, whose controversial practitioners still have to convince John Bull that the way in which a thing is painted is more important than what is painted. A tip to the hat to Mr. Shipley for exposing those frauds. Also, this one. Police baffled by monstrous murders. Killer beast shot, but still alive. Derwent Valley residents shocked last month by 2 murders and a serious assault on a 3rd victim are still without a satisfactory explanation or perpetrator of the dreadful attacks. At that time, Lesser Adale farmer George Osgood and resident Lydia Perkins were torn to shreds in an apparently unrelated murders on consecutive nights. On the 3rd night, wheelwright Harold Short was nearly killed but managed to drive off his attacker, which he described as a grisly creature. According to the Lesser Adale Constabulary, a rabid dog was shot and killed on the night of Mr. Short's attack. The police believe the matter closed. Nevertheless, local residents have subsequently claimed to have seen and heard a strange beast lurking about the area. Reportedly, the good folk of Lesser Adale still endure sleepless nights due to the bizarre wailings of the beast on the full moon. Readers of the Scoop are reminded of their esteemed journal's long-standing danger protocols, and are advised that the picturesque cloughs of the Derbyshire Peak District have been declared to be a zone of high danger. Residents of the Midlands are advised to remain indoors at night and report all mysterious happenings to the police and to the Scoop. And then this one. Slaughter continues. Reward offered. An unidentified foreigner was found floating in the Thames last Tuesday, the 24th. Another victim of the so-called Egyptian murders? Inspector James Barrington of the Yard refused to comment when asked by the Scoop. Sources exclusive to this journal state that the victim had been beaten severely and then stabbed through the heart in a manner curiously similar to the other murders that have taken place over the last 3 years. The connection seems obvious, but New Scotland Yard has yet to confirm that the deaths are connected. Inspector Barrington and his colleagues appear baffled and no closer to catching the heinous perpetrator of these crimes. Londoners cry out, "When will our streets be safe?" Readers of the Scoop are reminded that this esteemed journal has a reward now standing at £24 for information leading to the apprehension and conviction of the murderer. Be vigilant.
England prevails. You guys never watched V?
Oh my god. So, the 3 stories of interest are all unsigned, no named author. Mahoney says that he may have rewritten them from Wire a stringer copy to give him that little extra whoosh. Mahoney doesn't know if Jackson followed up on any of the stories. The man seemed rushed and desperate, and he soon left for New York. What he can tell you is that first one, the story was prompted by a small, unsuccessful show given by an artist named Miles Shipley, and that the artist's home, he gives you his address. It's in Chelsea. The second one, he can tell you that this story arose from an article in the Derbyshire Regional Press, picked up by Mahoney and rewritten for the Scoop. What notes exist are scant, merely stating that the murders took place in Lesser Adale, a village in rural Derbyshire. And the third one, Mahoney remembers that Jackson believed that the spate of murders were connected. Jackson, with his research tucked under his arm, went to see Inspector Barrington at New Scotland Yard.
I want to ask Mickey, what were the Egyptian murders?
So, Mickey can tell you that there's been a series of murders over the last 3 years. They've been called the Egyptian murders because it's been largely Egyptian nationals who have been murdered. The victims don't seem to have known each other. They don't seem to be really connected to each other. But most of them have been Egyptian, although there's been some white folks and Indian folks as well. um, and that it's the manner of death which seems to connect these cases. And Alistair, this kind of strikes a note with you from your reading of Life as a God.
Yeah, that alien stuff really unnerving me.
No, I'm talking the Egyptian murders.
Ah,
The manner of death sounds an awful lot like the ritual that you read about, and the ritual, uh, the ceremonial uh, device.
with the club with the single spike.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Want to fill us in, the rest of us in on that, or did he already?
Uh, yeah, from what I read on the ship, um, Montgomery Crumpton lived with an an African cult, the Pharaoh of the Darkness. Um, they went by the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh and performed various death rites with a weapon that was like a club with a single spike that was driven into the victim. The rites were performed on the nights of the dark moon, and the cult was identified by an inverted Ankh symbol. I think that was the majority of it.
Wow, it's got all the good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, so any connection between the victims and the night of the dark moon? They find a lot of them on or after that night.
Not always.
Still sounds. I mean, it's making sense to me. We got Egyptian stuff. We got strange cults, strange murders, inverted ankhs. Maybe look into that one.
And then the readings that I did of the panoptic manuscripts gave me a severe aversion to all things alien. I found out about a city on the desert founded by aliens from beyond Pluto. So the stuff that
Mickey's
Shipley
kind of
was
tapping his
doing.
teeth. Can
Uh-huh.
you tell me more? Would you consider writing something for the paper about that?
I will have to consider that.
Let's
I could easily sell that for £5.
let's stick within the realms of reality here. Maybe.
Is that going to be before or after your flat Earth article?
Oh, it's not flat. It's like a donut. It actually has a cave in
It's
it.
like a hole in
Don't talk to me about donuts.
Hollowworth. That's where I'm at.
So James Barrington, Scotland Yard. Maybe we should talk to him. Well, maybe we should get a bit more information and then talk to him, so we have something to go on.
Oh, we've had a bad run with the local law. I don't know.
Don't worry. I'm always very
close to
friendly
get
with
with
all types.
We can try out all our new charm skills. Does the paper have any like copies, photographs, prints, or whatever of Shipley's work, or was that just like he did the show? It wasn't that successful.
No, all he had is they did the show and he wasn't that successful.
Are there any back issues that also relate to the Egyptian murders that maybe have information that we don't currently have? Like anything Mickey's forgetting?
With a regular success library use roll, yeah, no, all you found was this, and all Mickey can remember is, he's told you what he knows.
Does Mickey know anything about the Carlisle expedition?
Or
What they were doing here when they were in England?
he says, "Oh yeah, Jackson was always on about the Carlyles. Carlyle this, Carlyle that." Um, what little I remember, it wasn't all that big news at the time. Until after the expedition went missing. But what I what little I can remember, I think they spent most of their time uh, over at the Penhew Foundation. Uh, but they were only in town for a couple of weeks before they set sail for Cairo.
Any interesting occurrences during that time period?
Any murders?
It's London, of course there were murders.
Uh, we talking weird shit, like the Egyptian murders. Actually, timeline-wise, did they start before or after?
Said 3 years, so that's
Yeah.
after the expedition.
Yeah, I'm just doing it up in my head.
Definitely, it didn't hit the papers until after, well after.
Um, so, even though the show wasn't that successful, Shipley's guy seems to be somewhat of a big deal if collectors are paying for it. Like, is there any? Do we know of any place where his paintings are being sold?
As far as I know, he just sells out of his house out in Chelsea.
Well, Jackson was talking about a cult that's got high society connections. Maybe the artist is worth looking into. If he's
Yeah.
selling to fancy type, I mean, it was like £300 for a painting. Who could afford that? You know, rich people.
Rich people.
And with rich people, there's always a story they don't want told.
Would Jesse have heard of this guy at all?
Which guy?
Shipley? Is he like that famous?
No.
Given that his backstory has some illustration and some pulp fiction.
Yeah, no. He's This is the first you've heard of him. He's relatively unknown.
Alrighty then.
Relatively unknown, and also appears to be somewhat new on the scene.
Yeah, I think Shipley is probably a good lead for us to track down.
Wait, so did Jackson actually... So Jackson didn't actually talk to these people, right?
Well, he went to see Inspector Barrington, the Egyptian murders guy, the policeman.
Okay.
That's all Mickey knows, I think.
And Mickey says that he knows that he was heading to see Barrington after he found that article. He's not sure that Jackson had time to follow up on the other two. He knows that the articles caught his eye, but he doesn't think that he had any time to go looking.
Well, all right. Do we want to go after the Egyptian murders or the painter? Because we should pick one.
Okay, who's feeling lucky? What time is it?
I will say that it's probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on your first day.
Well, I'm kind of interested in seeing what the subject of these paintings are and whether they're related to anything that we've already seen or read about, but it can go either way.
I'm
Try
so
not
sure
to
I
offend
wanna
the
look at
police
those.
on the first day.
Well, I mean, we should, if we want to talk to Barrington, we should look into the murders a little more and get some more information on them. Whereas the painter guy, we could probably just go to his house and talk to him, you know?
Do you think so?
I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to try to kill us, but
We could do that.
Are we thinking that these Egyptian murderers are by the same cults that we encountered before? Is that an idea, or
The similarities with this, the Black Pharaoh cult, definitely link everything.
because if it's like the cult that we ran into in New York and they were connected to the police and blah blah blah, that turned into a messy situation. Maybe we should save that for later.
All right. All right, so let's do the artist then. Oh, Bloody Tongue was the other one. I was wondering, like, when did the Black... Did we actually encounter a Black Pharaoh cult? I don't remember hearing about that.
That was in the book that I got from the Carlisle.
Gotcha. All right. I don't know where Chelsea is.
Okay, it's within the city of London, so you can get there pretty readily.
I thought it's according to Google Maps, it's not within the city of London.
Okay, sorry. It's within the London proper.
yeah,
So
the Greater London area.
Greater London area.
There's actually an area in London called City of London, but Chelsea.
Yeah, it's
Right.
really tiny. That's where all the banks are.
Okay. It's a little after 9:30, so why don't we take our break here and we'll pick it up with you guys heading to Chelsea. Work for everyone?
There's
Sounds
my
good to me.
Cool. All right, so we'll see you all back here at let's call it 9:45.
okay.
All righty.